When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit by Judith Kerr, Chapter 5. Papa had reserved rooms for them in the best hotel in Zurich. It had a revolving door and thick carpets and lots of gold everywhere. As it was still only 10 o'clock in the morning, they ate another breakfast while they talked about everything that had happened since Papa had left Berlin. At first, there seemed endless things to tell him, but after a while they found it was just nice being together without saying anything at all. While Anna and Max ate their way through 2 different kinds of croissants and 4 different kinds of jam, Mama and Papa sat smiling at each other. Every so often, they would remember something, and Papa would say, "Did you manage to bring the books?" And Mama would say, "The paper rang, and they'd like an article from you this week if possible." But then they would relapse back into their contented, smiling silence. At last, Max drank the last of his hot chocolate, wiped the last crumbs of croissant off his lips, and said, "What should we do now?" Somehow, nobody had thought. After a moment, Papa said, "Let's go and look at Zurich." They decided first of all, to go to the top of a hill overlooking the city. The hill was so steep that you had to go by funicular, a kind of lift on wheels that went straight up at an alarming angle. Anna had never been in one before, and spent her time between excitement at the experience and anxious scrutiny of the cable for signs of fraying. From the top of the hill you could see Zurich clustered below at one end of an enormous blue lake. It was so big that the town seemed quite small by comparison. At its far end was hidden by mountains. Streamers which looked like toys from this height were making their way round the edge of the lake, stopping at each village. Or steamers, which looked like toys from this height, were making their way round the edge of the lake, stopping at each of the villages scattered along the shores, and then moving on to the next. The sun was shining, and made it all look very inviting. "Can anyone go on those steamers?" asked Max. It was just what Anna had been going to ask. "Would you like to go?" said Papa. "So you shall, this afternoon." Lunch was splendid at a restaurant with a glassed-in terrace overlooking the lake below, but Anna could not eat much. Her head was feeling swimmy, probably from getting up so early, she thought, and though her nose had stopped running, her throat was sore. "Are you all right?" asked Mama anxiously. "Oh, yes," said Anna, thinking of the steamer trip in the afternoon. Anyway, she was sure it was just tiredness. There was a shop selling picture postcards next door to the restaurant, and she bought one and sent it to Heimby, while Max sent one to Gunther. "I wonder how they're getting on with the elections," said Mama. "Do you think the Germans will really vote for Hitler?" "I'm afraid so," said Papa. "They might not," said Max. "A lot of boys in my school were against him. We might find tomorrow almost no one voted for Hitler, and then we could all go home again, just like Uncle Julius said." "It's possible," said Papa, but Anna could see he didn't really think so. The steamer trip in the afternoon was a great success. Anna and Max stayed on the open deck in spite of the cold wind and watched the other traffic on the lake. Apart from the steamers, there were private motor launches and even a few rowing boats. Their steamer went chugging along from village to village on one side of the lake. These all looked very pretty, with their neat houses nestling among the woods and the hills. Whenever the steamer was getting near a landing stage, it hooted loudly to let everyone in the village know that it was coming, and quite a lot of people got on and off each time. After about an hour, it suddenly steamed straight across the lake to a village on the other side, and then made its way back to Zurich, where it all started. As she had walked back to the hotel through the noise of cars and buses and clanging trams, Anna found she was very tired, and her head felt swimmy again. She was glad to get back to the hotel room which she shared with Max. She still was not hungry, and Mama thought she looked so weary that she tucked her into bed straight away. As soon as Anna put her head down on the pillow, her whole bed seemed to take off and float away in the darkness with the chugging noise which might have been a boat or a train or a sound coming from her own head. Anna's impression when she opened her eyes in the morning was that the room was far too bright. She closed them again quickly and lay still, trying to collect herself. There was a murmur of voices at the other end of the room, and also a rustling sound which she could not identify. It must be quite late, and everyone else must be up. She opened her eyes again cautiously, And this time the brightness heaved and swayed and finally rearranged itself into the room she knew, with Max, still in his pajamas, sitting up in the other bed, and Mama and Papa standing close by. Papa had a newspaper, and this was what was making the rustling sound. They were talking quietly because they thought she was still asleep. Then the room gave another heave, and she closed her eyes again and seemed to drift away somewhere where the voices went on. Someone was saying, "So they've got a majority." And then the voice faded away, and another, or was it the same one, said, "Enough votes to do what he wants." And then, unmistakably, Max, very unhappily, "So we shan't be going back to Germany." So we shan't be going back to Germany. Had he really said it 3 times? Anna opened her eyes with a great effort and said, "Mama." At once one of the figures detached itself from the group and came toward her, and suddenly Mama's face appeared quite close to hers. Anna said, "Mama," again. And then all at once she was crying because her throat was so sore. After this everybody became vague. Mama and Papa were standing by her bed, looking at a thermometer. Papa had his coat on. He must have gone out to buy the thermometer. Especially, someone said, 104, but it couldn't be her temperature they were talking about, because she couldn't remember having it taken. Next time she opened her eyes, there was a man with a little beard looking at her. He said, "Well, young lady," and smiled, and as he smiled, his feet left the ground, and he flew to the top of the wardrobe, where he changed into a bird, and sat croaking, "Influenza," until Mama shooed him out of the window. Then suddenly it was night, and she asked Max to get her some water, but Max was not there. It was Mama in the other bed. Anna said, "Why are you sleeping in Max's bed?" Mama said, "Because you are ill." Then Anna felt glad, because if she was ill, it meant that Heimpy would be coming to look after her. She said, "Tell Heimpy," but then she was too tired to remember the rest. And the next time she looked, the man with the little beard was there again. And she didn't like him because he was upsetting Mama by saying "complications" over and over. He had done something to the back of Anna's neck, and it made it all swollen and sore, and now he was feeling it with his hand. She said, "Don't do that!" quite sharply, but he took no notice and tried to make her drink something horrible. Anna was going to push it away, but then she saw that it was not the man with the beard after all, but Mama, and her blue eyes looked so fierce and determined that it didn't seem worth resisting. After this, the world grew a little steadier. She began to understand that she had been ill for some time, that she still had a high temperature, and that the reason she felt so awful was that the glands in her neck were enormously swollen and tender. "We must get the temperature down," said the doctor with the beard. Then Mama said, "I'm going to put something on your neck to make it better." Anna saw some steam rising from a basin. "It's too hot," she cried. "I don't want it." "I won't put it on too hot," said Mama. "I don't want it," screamed Anna. "You don't know how to look after me. Where's Heimpy? Heimpy wouldn't put hot steam on my neck." "Nonsense," said Mama, and suddenly she was holding a steaming pad of cotton wool against her own neck. "There," she said. "It's not too hot for me. It won't be too hot for you." And she clapped it firmly on Anna's neck, then quickly wrapped a bandage round it. It was terribly hot, but just bearable. "That wasn't so bad, was it?" said Mama. Anna was much too angry to answer, and the room was beginning to spin again. But as she drifted off into vagueness, she could just hear Mama's voice. "I'm going to get that temperature down if it kills me." After this, she must have dozed or dreamed, because suddenly her neck was quite cool again, and Mama was unwrapping it. "How are you, fat pig?" said Mama. "Fat pig?" said Anna weakly. Mama very gently touched one of Anna's swollen glands. "This is Fat Pig," she said. "It's the worst of the lot. The one next to him isn't quite so bad. It's called Slim Pig, and this one is called Pink Pig, and this is Baby Pig, and this one, what shall we call this one?" "Fräulein Lambeck," said Anna, and began to laugh. She was so weak that the laugh sounded more like a cackle, but Mama seemed very pleased just the same. Mama kept putting on the hot fomentations, and it was not too bad because she always made jokes about Fat Pig and Slim Pig and Fräulein Lambeck. But though her neck felt better, Anna's temperature still stayed up. She would wake up feeling fairly normal, but by lunch she would be giddy, and by the evening everything would have become vague and confused. She got the strangest ideas. She was frightened of the wallpaper and could not bear to be alone. Once, when Mamma left her to go downstairs for supper, she thought the room was getting smaller and smaller, and cried because she thought she would be squashed. After this, Mamma had her supper on a tray in Anna's room. The doctor said, "She can't go on like this much longer." Then one afternoon, Anna was lying staring at the curtains. Mamma had just drawn them because it was getting dark, and Anna was trying to see what shapes the folds had made. The previous evening they had made a shape like an ostrich, and as Anna's temperature went up, she had been able to see the ostrich more and more clearly, until at last she had been able to make him walk all round the room. This time, she thought, perhaps there might be an elephant. Suddenly she became aware of whispering at the other end of the room. She turned her head with difficulty. Papa was there, sitting with Mamma, and they were looking at a letter together. She could not hear what Mamma was saying, but she could tell from the sound of her voice that she was excited and upset. Papa folded the letter into his hand on Mamma's and Papa folded the letter and put his hand on Mamma's, and Anna thought he would probably go soon, but he didn't. He just stayed there and holding Mamma's hand. Anna watched them for a while, until her eyes became tired and she closed them. The whispering voices had become more quiet and even. Somehow it was a very soothing sound, and after a while Anna fell asleep listening to it. When she woke up, she knew at once she had slept for a long time. There was something else, too, that was strange, but she could not quite make out what it was. The room was dim, except for a light on the table by which Mamma usually sat, and Anna thought she must have forgotten to switch it off when she went to bed. But Mamma had not gone to bed. She was still sitting there with Papa, just as they had done before when Anna went to sleep. Papa was still holding Mamma's hand in one of his, and the folded letter in the other. "Hello, Mamma." "Hello, Papa," said Anna. "I feel so peculiar." Mamma and Papa came over to her bed at once, and Mamma put a hand on her forehead. Then she popped the thermometer in Anna's mouth. When she took it out again, she did not seem to be able to believe what she saw. "It's normal," she said. "For the first time in 4 weeks, it's normal." "Nothing else matters," said Papa, and crumpled up the letter. After this, Anna got better quite quickly. Fat Pig, Slim Pig, Fraulein Lambic, and the rest gradually shrank, and her neck stopped hurting. She began to eat again and to read. Max came and played cards with her when he wasn't out somewhere with Papa, and soon she was allowed to get out of bed for a little while and sit in the chair. Mamma had to help her walk the few steps across the room, but she felt very happy sitting in the warm sunshine by the window. Outside, the sky was blue, and she saw that the people in the street below were not wearing overcoats. There was a lady selling tulips at a stall on the opposite pavement, and a chestnut tree at the corner was in full leaf. It was spring. She was amazed how much everything had changed during her illness. The people on the street seemed pleased with the spring weather, too, and several bought flowers from the stall. The lady selling tulips was round and dark-haired and looked a little bit like Heimpy. And we'll pause there.